Politics has a short memory, but tonight we're not letting it forget. That means we're talking about not just foreign policy and what's going on right now with Venezuela and maybe even Iran, but also about Trump's presidency from the past year overall and predictions that we made a year ago and holding ourselves accountable to those predictions. So, foreign policy, domestic policy, economics, and the bigger picture about what we place our hope in, whether it's in politics or in something else. All that and more is coming to you live here in the LCI Green Room. Hey everyone, I am Jacob Winograd. You probably all know me by now, and I'm here with my probably most frequent co-host on the Green Room, as well as frequent guest over on my show, the Biblical Anarchy Podcast, our co-host of the Libertarian Christians Podcast, the anarchist Anabaptist himself, Mr. Cody Cook. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I want to apologize to the viewers who were misled by the promo image into thinking that we were going to be nude for this particular conversation. But I can see those numbers dropping from when they first popped in. But that's all right.
Yes, I see Amity already in the chat saying, "Thank goodness y'all put your shirts back on." Yeah. No, we're not doing shirtless episodes tonight, but that'll be for the insiders only. So like if you want to go to libertarianchristians.com/donate, and we're going to be doing monthly insider calls. Probably so every month we have like a team meeting, and then we're going to start doing our insider calls after our team meeting, which will be on Mondays. So there'll be a couple Mondays where instead of a green room, there's going to be an insider call. So you'll have to join and see if perhaps you can catch us topless on one of those meetings. That's probably not the best way to leave a good impression on donors, but you never know. Give the people what they want. We're capitalists, right? But see a lot of all of you in the chat. Changed forever for yo Jacob. What's good? Hello, thank you. Yeah, a lot of you guys. I see some of you are watching on the mobile version, by the way, which is totally fine. But if you guys want to, if you're watching on your phone and that works for you, that's good. But you can also just click on the channel and go and watch the widescreen version and have a little bit easier time watching it. Sometimes I prefer the wide view, but YouTube now has the option to stream to both the vertical and the wide. So we're going to do what our YouTube overlords tell us to do. To get the views, to get the clicks, because I think Cody and I would probably just talk to each other even if no one was listening, but it's better if there's some people listening too. It's more productive that way. So we're here tonight, of course. The big thing that the thumbnail was promoting was that we made predictions about Trump's first year a year ago, and we're going to be revisiting, going over those predictions a little bit later on. But I wanted to start by just kind of, while people are coming to the stream and waiting for more people to join, we can just talk a little bit about what's gone on the last few days. I thought, and I know I was listening to Dave DeCamp and Kyle Anzalone from antiwar.com today, and I was thinking like them, like it's Christmas, it's New Year's, we should be able to kind of relax and take it easy. Nothing huge is going to pop off. It's not like the president would start a new war over the holiday break, but no, that's exactly what he did, as well as threatening another one. So I don't know. What do you? Well, first of all, can we call this a war? Because I've been challenged on this, Cody. I've been told by many Trump supporters, by many from proud MAGA Republicans, that this was not a war, what happened in Venezuela. What's your take on that? Are they right? Am I missing something here?
I mean, listen, I understand that when you come in and you do a little bit of bombing, you kidnap the president, you arrest him, the people cheer that you showed up. I understand why people would say that the invasion of Iraq was not a war. Nevertheless, we were there for 20 years and that's what happened. And we called it a war. Now, so yeah, and so if the argument that MAGA was making, no more wars, we're not doing Iraq again, Iraq was a mistake, yada, yada, yada. If that follows, if they're serious about that, then whether they want to call Iraq a war or not, technically, this is not what they voted for. And so every time somebody says, well, this is what I voted for, it's like, no, you voted America first. You voted mind your business. You voted end the war state. No more quagmires. That's what you voted for. And also, anti-immigration stuff and tariffs. But like that was part of the deal. And so, I mean, call it whatever you want. It's Iraq. I mean, it's Iraq 2.0. And so, I'm hopeful. I hope that for the Venezuelan people that it's going to go a lot better than that. Like, I know some of the situations on the ground are a little bit different as far as the culture and what's going on there, but it's like anything Trump does that's like sort of stupid or haphazard. It's like, I hope it turns out well, because like people get hurt if it doesn't. Like, I'm not hoping it goes terribly, but it's just not wise. And if it does go, better than we think it might, that's not like a reason for us to go, oh, we were wrong. Like, no, it's a good policy to not just go around invading countries all the time. Like that's the right thing to do. And if it happens to work, thank God. But that doesn't mean we keep doing it, even though Trump is saying he's going to keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this whole like, well, what if it ends up good, right? Or if they point to, I mean, I can't think of many. I think the only major intervention and sort of nation building project that anyone can ever point to is Japan. And I think that there are some major discrepancies and caveats and like just things that are not congruent in comparing Japan and that intervention and nation building experiment to a lot of the more modern ones. But it's kind of like, if you were going to, no matter what, if you're going to try to say, well, what if it works out good, right? Like, it's not destined to go bad. It's like, you know what? Drunk driving is not necessarily destined to go bad, but that doesn't mean you should do it. Doesn't mean it's a good recommendation or a good mode of behavior to engage in, just because that, well, I've drunk driven at least 3 times and I didn't get in an accident. It's like, okay.
And I saved a child's life when I did it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, I think in general people could point to World War II, the Marshall Plan and the nation building that happened. I mean, I think there were a lot of French people and Polish people that were glad that we invaded, right? And I think there's some significant differences between World War II and then just sort of waking up one morning and saying we're just going to go ahead and invade a South American country and see what happens and take their oil. Like,
like that meme, like what was like woke up feeling cute, might kidnap a government leader today. I don't know.
Yeah, I might invade. So yeah, I mean, and I think, I don't know. Like, I don't want to do a whole relitigating World War II episode. But I think it's true that there have been times where we've intervened and things went okay. But I don't really think that's the standard. Sometimes does it work? Sometimes are we glad we did it? That's not really the standard. And these are the kind of debates that like Scott Horton had with Bill Kristol and that we've seen kind of over and over and over again. And it's a question of policy. Do we take our shovel and go to the foreign policy graveyard and dig up the Monroe Doctrine and say, oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and police everybody in our hemisphere again? And which it's such a dumb argument to make to appeal to the Monroe Doctrine at this point, because this is the very first country that Trump has bombed in our hemisphere. Every other country, I think 8, has been in another hemisphere. And so it's incredibly, just an incredible special pleading. It has nothing to do with anything.
There's also, and I haven't gotten into this in the public discourse yet, because it actually wouldn't mean a whole lot to the MAGA people. But if there were liberal people who were trying to argue with me on this, I'd say, like, now as a libertarian, as a non-interventionist, I don't believe in the Monroe Doctrine. Mm-hmm. But there is something kind of funny about how liberals are against, I guess they're kind of consistent on this. Like, the whole thing with like Russia and Ukraine is basically Russia saying, well, we have a right to our own Monroe Doctrine. Right. And I don't accept that. I think that there is something to that argument in terms of just pointing out the hypocrisy of, like, if you're okay with America having a Monroe Doctrine for our hemisphere, then you don't have good grounds to object to Russia having their own Monroe Doctrine in their hemisphere. But obviously, as a libertarian and a Christian, I don't think any country should have a Monroe Doctrine for whether it's left, right, north, south, or whatever. I think, like, you have a right. Well, I mean, it's all relative, right? If you're going to even argue to me that nation states should exist and have a right to exist, and I was somehow persuaded of that, which I'm not. But at the very most, they could be argued to have a right to like govern which is within their own borders, and they don't have a right to go around and be like the question I've been asking everyone, just even Monroe Doctrine aside, is just like, what gives any government the right to go and view another country, other government, and say your leader is illegitimate and we have the right to overthrow them?
Yeah, well, and I mean, ultimately, it really comes down to strength, right? And this is why I think Trump has been kind of ambivalent about what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, is because I think on a fundamental level he gets the logic that Putin is invoking there. But yeah, I mean, if Venezuela wants to produce drugs, okay, just going back to this whole kind of everybody minds their business, America first kind of thing. If you want to police the borders, police the coasts or whatever, go ahead, police your own country, right? But like once you start saying, well, they're producing drugs, so we can go there and bomb them, it's just completely incoherent. And then essentially what happens is anytime anybody wants to bomb anybody because they don't like what they're doing, they can do it, right? Because somebody here might buy a thing that they're selling. So yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this a little bit, that in my arguments with people on this, it's I think so transparently just a bad argument that's being made by the Trump administration, by the people who are defending him. It's a complete 180. And it's always true that when partisanship is at play, but it's especially true with MAGA, that they really don't believe in anything except supporting the team, sticking up for their guy. First they voted for Trump because he wasn't going to invade another country for oil and rebuild their government. And then now this is exactly why they voted for him. And it was good to invade Venezuela because their ruler was a drug dealer. But it was also good that Trump pardoned another ruler to the south for trafficking drugs. Or it was good that he took out Maduro because he was a dictator. But it's also good that he kept us out of war with Putin. Or it was morally righteous and noble of us to invade Venezuela because it's going to benefit the Venezuelan people, but also it won't cost us anything because we're taking their oil. America first. And so there's just, I think, this consistent pattern amongst MAGA that they don't actually believe in anything. And this is why the whole TDS charge that always comes up anytime anyone criticizes Trump derangement syndrome, it's such a frustrating term. I mean, to begin with, of course, there are people who are never going to credit Trump even for good things, and they're going to believe the worst things about him without any evidence, whatever, sure. But there's a considerable part of the MAGA base that's going to justify literally anything he does. And that is equally, if not more, deranged. And so the term TDS itself suggests a framing of politics or values as somehow centering on how you feel about Trump. Do you reject him or do you embrace him? And so the key question in American politics right now is essentially the same one that Jesus asked Peter: who do you say that I am? And so anytime someone criticizes something Trump does and somebody says TDS, what they're saying is, do you agree that he is the Lord, or do you not agree that he is the Lord? You can't have, you have to either reject him or you have to accept him. And it's this strange messianic kind of approach. And so, I don't think that Trump is the Messiah or the Antichrist, but I guess I'm closer to the latter, but not because I worship at the altar of progressivism. It's because I serve the slain lamb instead of the dragon. So anyway,
I like what Norm just put in here, by the way. Trump adulation syndrome, which is, yeah, like if there's such a thing as Trump, I think there is such a thing as Trump derangement syndrome. Although I don't think it's unique to Trump. I think that there's, in politics in general, it's whether it's a person or a political party or a group or a faction, where you stop you stop seeing nuance and you view everything in very like cartoonish
Yeah.
caricatures of sort of like black and white and sort of a uh yeah, and just in sort of a sensational way. But certainly that goes for the hero worship and sort of like mental gymnastics used to justify things that 6 months ago, or 12 months ago or 13 months ago you were decrying. Now that your guy does it, and to be fair, like that sort of tribal thing happens on the
Yeah.
other side. Like there's the hypocrisy of people on the left complaining about things that Trump is like. Some of my responses actually 80 to 90% of the responses on my most viral post in the last few days on this, which got over like a million views, was people just assuming I was a Democrat and making an argument that I actually agree with, except it doesn't apply to me, where they're like, oh, so like you guys were all like, no kings and whatnot until it was like a dictator or something, right? And then saying, well, like Biden and Obama, like they did all these horrible foreign policy interventions, things like that. And I'm like, yeah, no, you're right. I'm against all of it. Like you're wrong about who you think I am, but like you're right to point out that both sides do this. And
Right.
oh
Right.
boy, what if there was more than two options to viewing politics and just team red or team blue?
Yeah. Well, yeah, is it possible that there's people who actually believe in something other than the team? As for Norm's Trump adulation system, I've seen a lot of these kind of other arguments for what's the counterpoint to TDS, and to me, it's all TDS. Like I'm not willing to sort of give them that term because to me, like Trump deranges politics. Trump deranges everyone. It's like as if anybody's read that Stephen King book, The Stand. There's this figure named Randall Flagg who's kind of like a demon, and he like sort of shows up, and like every time he like enters a room, people like start to kill each other. And and it's like that for Trump. I mean, like he doesn't just derange his opponents. He deranges his supporters. And so I'm not quite willing to give up on the idea that the term TDS should not be just used across the board. That we need to. I don't think necessarily know if we need a separate term for that.
No, fair enough. Now, I see Zach in the comments also said the concern is that a new leader is most likely going to take that is most likely going to take power, and this transition is a Likud asset, and that's something that I've been kind of covering, or I keep on clicking the wrong button. That I've been kind of keeping track of as well. I know like antiwar.com people have been kind of making this point that there are some connections between uh or at least some alleged connections between Venezuela and Iran. And they say that, I just think anytime the regime opposes someone, whether it's true or not, they just say, oh, these people send money to terrorist groups. Like it's just kind of the pattern, right? What they say that they send money to Hezbollah and Iran and other anti-America groups, and that I guess like China and Iran. I don't know if Russia was part of that equation too, but that they were trying to get a greater foothold in Venezuela. And so again, it's the enforcement of that Monroe Doctrine. So it's kind of like half motivations from America, half motivations for Israel. I've even heard it supposed that Trump has made some comments to this end, suggesting that Iran needs to respect their protesters, and even other just things that are kind of hinting that even though the Trump people have told me that the 12-day war is over and won and done, that Trump might be interested in revisiting conflict with Iran. So, as much as I don't want to do the meme of the anti-war libertarian, just kind of like, saying it's all about Israel every time something happens. I mean, listen, it's like the MAGA right, or not really the MAGA right, but just the right and like the Zionist right and left, they can't have it both ways. They can't say Israel is our greatest ally and then get mad if then, because like, well, you insist it, they're our greatest ally, which means that they're going to be near the top of our foreign policy considerations. That doesn't mean I'm saying Israel controls our foreign policy decisions, but they're going to factor majorly into like what we're doing in terms of considering what their leaders want and what's good. Like if they're great, they're greatest, if they're our greatest ally, then like it would make sense you're trying to do what's good for both of you, right?
Well, and I think even we can even set the kind of the more speculative stuff about Israel aside in this particular instance, and just talk about what's actually happening. So the United States government has kidnapped the president. They did not install the thank you. They did not install the guy. Sorry, was it a woman who had won the popular vote in the recent election that has not
I think
been put
so.
in place?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't install her. I'm sorry, I forgot the name. Instead, they install Maduro's vice president, who is a leader in the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Delcy Gomez, and the person that Trump has sort of put in charge of overseeing this project is Stephen Miller, who is I know sometimes these words can get used a little bit, liberally, but who's essentially a white nationalist. And so a guy who's a white nationalist who tweets about how horrible Latinos are constantly is in charge of overseeing what's going on in Venezuela. And it's almost like to be expected at this point. And so what's really happening in Venezuela? I mean, there's not like an indication. Well, then of course, all of this is in service to what Trump is saying, that he is going to get our oil back, which is essentially what Smedley Butler wrote about in War as a Racket, that that the military apparatus is serving business interests, because it's not our oil. I'm not going to benefit from this in any significant way. It's agreements that American oil companies made with the government that the government there in Venezuela has not honored. That's their loss. It's not my loss. And Trump saying that it's patriotic for us to invade Venezuela to make American oil companies whole is just incredible to me. And it goes back to something I suspect we'll talk about more, which is the fact that they used to lie to us about this kind of stuff. Like when we invaded Iraq, everybody knew that oil had something to do with it, but like nobody in the Bush administration would say that. Like Rush Limbaugh might kind of say it occasionally and say, well, so what if it is about oil? We need oil. But like nobody in the Bush administration would come out and say that. And everybody in the Bush administration has talked about oil. And so I just, it's kind of
there's
incredible.
something. Again, this goes back to a point I've been making for a while now, which is this sort of like, I keep on hearing preached to me the superiority of the values of Western culture, that we're better than the rest of the world because we were founded in an ethos that is Christian, that we believe in God, that we supposedly fight for moral reasons, that we're a moral nation, that, we're part of a moral crusade to push these values to the rest of the world and to be a beacon of light and liberty in the world. And that like we're the herald, the champions, the heralders of civilization. Now, there's something about that even though I don't want to, like, I would never make those exact points, there's something to that where there's a kernel of truth that I will acknowledge, right? Which is that I think for all the faults of our government and our leaders and even our culture at time, that there is something about Western civilization that is special and that did emerge from a Christian history and background. And yet, I feel like when the people who invoke this stuff want to have their cake and eat it too, when they want to lecture me on the superiority of Western culture over these more primitive, barbarian cultures, whether we're talking about Muslims in the Middle East or we're talking about socialists and communists in South America, or we're talking about Russia and China, whatever. But then they'll, like, more and more, now that Trump's back in power, I hear people just appealing to this sort of might makes right ethic. This sort of like, well, I literally had someone today, Cody, to me, unironically, in a group chat that I'm in, just say, "Well, this is how force doctrine works," and I'm like, "Okay, but like, and this is a Christian group chat. Like, so wait, you are a Christian, I am a Christian, and your appeal for why America's actions in Venezuela are correct is because of force doctrine." And then double down on like, yeah, and like this is how the world works, right? It's like it's if you have the power to take over areas and control the resources, then you do that. And that makes it, and I'm just like, okay, fine. And listen, you can make that argument. There are people who make that who are like they call themselves political realists, right? And they're just like, they just they unironically just believe in might makes right. But then, like, you can't say might makes right and then pretend to be a Christian and then pretend to say that like Western civilization is better. Because what you're actually doing is just admitting that, well, no, actually, our culture, our society is just like every other culture and society in that we're all just trying to seize power and we're all just trying to control whatever we can control and just we're better at it. Right. We're just, and listen, might definitely makes. I'm not disagreeing with that fact, but might doesn't make right. There's a difference between describing reality and that power often does win, and that like listen, even in a dispute, right? Like if you and I had a dispute over property and you were the rightful owner of something, that doesn't mean I can't overpower you and take it, right? So might can make reality, but it doesn't make right. And I'm getting kind of tired of being gaslit by people on the right when they try to tell me that listen, the people on the left, on the far left, and the sort of like postmodern left are making the same arguments, but they're honest. They say there's no such thing as God. There's no such thing as objective morality. We just believe that civilization is just a history of power struggles and between different identity groups. And so we just need to make our own coalition of identity groups and fight for power and win. Like that's the postmodern, post-structuralist ethos of the left that they've been operating under, and they're honest about it. But they are honest about also being moral relativists. Don't preach to me the virtues of Western civilization while you practice the same sort of praxeology of moral relativists. It's just it's disgusting, and it's among the many things that I think of is the type of behavior that Jesus was talking about when he says that there will be people who did all sorts. I did all sorts of things in your name, and he'll say, "Depart from me, I never knew you."
Well, and there's a horseshoe theory thing here, of course, because these ideas also come through the new right from European thinkers in the beginning of the last century who were blood and soil nationalists and said Christianity took us off course because it was universalistic. It looked at humanity as a and talked about sort of equality, and we need to go back to paganism. and Nietzsche makes a pretty similar argument that God is in service of the will to power, and if you have a God that doesn't do that, then it's not a very good God. That Christianity is slave morality, and I like to say, I'm going to work on something on this, by the way, in the next year, so I'm excited about that. But yeah, I mean, it's almost like a kind of a weird satanic parody of like Lutheranism, where it's like declared righteousness is completely cut off from like behavioral righteousness, right? It's like, why is Western civilization good? Well, because we call it Christian, and because it was once good. Right? And it's like, well, I mean, is it good because like you're maintaining that because of your behavior, because of your actions? It's like, no, it's not good for any of those reasons. None of that matters. It matters that we are called Christian, and that kind of declared righteousness doesn't do anything. If you're going to act worse than any bloodthirsty medieval Muslim caliph or whatever, then your history, your heritage doesn't mean anything. And it's like, what I'm feeling a lot of the same frustrations you are, but maybe to an even greater degree, because like, politics is always dumb and evil. And my life's experience of American politics has been that it's dumb and evil. But I'm not really feeling great about living in this country right now. And I feel like a lot of it is kind of where I'm seeing there's always been a falseness and a hypocrisy in a lot of this Trump stuff, but this is just so blatant
Yeah.
to me. And there was something about how Bush would lie, and it was infuriating that people couldn't see through it, but at least you knew that he thought we were good enough people that he had to lie to us.
Right.
But Trump is just transparently corrupt and wicked. Like, he obstructed the release of the Epstein files to protect his pedophile friends, possibly himself also. He circumvented the few reasonable norms and laws we have more blatantly than any president has in the last 100 years. He's been saying explicitly that we invaded Venezuela for oil, and his supporters
Are cheering it.
completely
Yeah.
cool with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like the same people who said they wouldn't tolerate another Iraq or Afghanistan are now calling us libtards and Maduro sympathizers because we don't think we should have gotten into another situation that's so close to Iraq that if Hollywood made a movie about it, they would be criticized for hack writing.
Right.
And I hate that my neighbors and friends and family members are okay with being evil if it means they get to align with Donald Trump. And if I thought I could change their minds or appeal to their better natures, I'd feel differently about it. But I feel like a microcosm of what like sane, moral Germans and Italians must have felt like in the 30s when all their neighbors were saying, "Hey, isn't this guy the greatest?" like, it's
Yeah.
like,
No, you said this to me earlier, and you were like worried about like, I don't want to be overstating it. And I was like, well, I think, like, listen, I think there are things about Trump that are really, really bad,
yeah,
and I think there's a similarity in the phenomenon, even if Trump hasn't risen to that level yet. But also, like, there's this weird, like, the gap between that, you know, invoking Godwin's law
hmm
and Trump's reality here is it's certainly narrowing. I don't know that anyone could really dispute that in any meaningful way. And part of my frustration, and like this can be maybe a transition to starting to talk about our predictions from a year ago, because I think most people know that I voted for Trump along with many other libertarians. And part of my calculus for that was sort of that, like, well, like even when I was envisioning what I thought was like the worst case scenario, which, to be clear, my idea of the worst case scenario was nothing like right now. But my idea of the worst case scenario, insofar as it resembled some things that are going on right now, was thinking, well, if all these people in this coalition who voted for Trump for these specific reasons, if Trump goes back on all those things, then won't people wake up and realize that the Republican Party is doomed and failed, and that we need, to try something different? Um, I did not anticipate. I anticipated some of the diehard Trump people like never abandoning ship, but
hmm
not to this degree, and not in response to Trump literally, like, he had already kind of stripped some of the pretense from politics, which was kind of what you were alluding to when George Bush had to,
yeah.
George Bush and Obama and Biden like had the decency to try to lie and to make their atrocities seem like they were being done in service of some kind of like uh more sophisticated thing. Like they had better
Well,
propaganda.
it's well,
Trump is not a propagandist other
yeah, yeah.
than he's like a snake oil salesman, and he's like a propagandist for himself. But that's it. He's just
But he
like,
wink- but he winks at you when he does it. Yeah, and I think
yeah.
it's with like a Bush or Obama. I don't want to interrupt you. I want you to finish your thought, but I just want to just kind of throw this out here. Hypocrisy is the compliment that vice pays to virtue, and I just it's no one's even paying virtue that compliment anymore. Vice is just going, yeah, I'm vice, so what? you know. Anyway.
Well, so there's a comment here which I think is worth responding to quick. You don't think there's an aspect of liberation motivation in Venezuela? I want to be clear here. I think that there were people who celebrated in Iraq and around
Mhm.
the world when Saddam Hussein was taken down, including like there were people in Iraq who did welcome us as liberators. There were people in Afghanistan who welcomed us as liberators. There were people in Ukraine during the Maidan Revolution who were definitely part of a grassroots movement to change their government, and yet the people who are the sort of like acting force apparatus to make this happen, which is our own government. And in all these examples, whether this is Venezuela, whether it's Iraq, whether it's even Ukraine and Maidan, and many other examples of all these sort of like revolutions and regime changes that we've been a part of. It's not to say there's never any uh, people on the ground who are desperately wanting that to happen, who are even asking for that to happen. But what are the motivations of the people who are doing it?
Yeah.
Is it being, are the people in power doing it because they just really want Venezuelans to be free? And I think it's kind of a mixed bag. Like if I listen to someone like Marco Rubio, I actually think to some extent that they believe their own like propaganda. And I think to some extent he thinks that American hegemony and control of the world is spreading freedom to people. So like, yeah, I guess to some extent they care about the people, but what they care about more is increasing the control, is protecting the American empire, which is like the guarant like in a way, both the Christian nationalists and the post right, like far right, and your normal MAGA people and your neocons are all in their own way operating under the same rubric, which is that we are living post Constitution. Now, what comes after the Constitution, there's disagreement on, right? The Christian nationalists and post right types, they want more of this like hyper nationalist, isolationist, often racialist society. Whereas your neocons, they want this sort of like, you know, uh new liberal order that America is at the head of the reign, like it controls the reins of, right? But either way, like we're no longer, and again, like you and I are anarchists, voluntarists, like we don't even believe in the Constitution at the end of the day. But I would rather be dealing with constitutional conservatives who are appealing to like, hey, what guarantees our rights and our securities and like liberty in the world is like self-governance and strong constitutions that limit government power. No one's saying that anymore. No one is arguing that. It's all about, whether it's your uh nationalist vision or your, imperialist vision. People are putting their faith in strong government of just different stripes to secure their freedoms and their liberties. But really, like, again, in both instances, it's to secure certain liberties for certain people, but at the expense of other people. And then even then, the liberties you're being granted are kind of like there's an asterisk there because it's kind of like, at the expense of a lot of, in both cases, at the expense of a lot of economic freedom as well as at the expense of a lot of your civil and personal liberties.
Well, and I think too, the question's an interesting one because, you know, my initial response is, well, there's kind of an arbitrariness. Why this country, not that country? Because there's all kinds of horrible stuff happening all over the world. Although I almost don't want to say that because apparently Trump's got a few other Trump and a little Marco Rubio have some other countries on their list, so we'll see what happens. But I guess my answer to that question would be it's probably an explanation or a rationale that's coming later to sort of shore it up. Like I think they have other reasons for focusing on Venezuela, but then they're going to say, but you know what? Whatever the reason I'm doing it for, whatever my motivations are, at least these people are going to be free. And I think there was a lot of that in Iraq and a lot of that in Afghanistan. I think it's often, I don't think it's the leading concern in almost any case when you have these big foreign policy things. But I think, most of these people aren't, completely Satan all the time. Like I think that they think that they're doing something good one way or another. And so I think it makes them probably helps them to sleep at night to be able to say, but look how happy they are chanting in the streets, Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think there again. It's hard for me to know. Like I feel like sometimes the most forward facing people kind of like, yeah, they do that kind of post hoc rationalization. But again, like then there's just more and more from the Trump admin where it's like you can tell it's like they're not even trying to give you a very strong. It's like an afterthought, right?
Yeah, right.
Like I don't know. Like
It's
there
a
was
talking point.
like with George Bush and the war on terror, right? Like it was very easy, even looking back, right? Because like I was, I think we were both younger when 9/11 happened. I was really young. I was in elementary school. And even though I know better, I can go back and watch an old George W. Bush clip about like, the things he said after 9/11, and it'll still kind of like it invoke a kind of emotional reaction to me because it was just something about like, yeah, we were attacked and we have to go over there and get justice and protect our people and be like, and he would couch it in this sort of like, moral crusading language that like, it has some like superficial, like surface level appeal. And it made me feel like, oh, he actually is like trying to argue for this being like a moral war. And it's just like Trump and Rubio and all these people, like I just don't, for them, it just seems much more calculated and political, with the
Right.
propaganda being this like afterthought thing tacked on to kind of try to give it the like, some plausible deniability of not just being uh, a war fought for the interests of the elites.
I think those kind of arguments come primarily so you have something to meme against the liberals, right? It's like, oh, the liberals don't like kings, but here they are sticking up for a dictator. Like, and it's like just intentionally misunderstanding the argument that's being made. But it's a good talking point, and stupid people fall for it.
Yeah.
For those who maybe are a little bit younger than we are and don't remember any of the Afghanistan, Iraq stuff, I'd recommend going out and watching two documentaries. One is on Paramount Plus called Bodyguard of Lies, and it comes from a statement, I think, from Churchill, maybe that the truth has to always be accompanied by a bodyguard of lies. And that's about the Afghanistan war. And there's another great one that came out just a few years after I think we invaded Iraq, called Why We Fight. And that's an incredible introduction to the idea of the military-industrial complex. And it's I was rewatching it the day after we invaded Venezuela, and it was just incredible to see all the parallels coming back up again.
Yeah, no, that's good recommendations. Let's get into our predictions then now. So, uh, do you want to lead with this, I guess, because I'm the one who voted for Trump. So
Sure.
you might want to have the opportunity to grill me a little bit, but we both made predictions, so we'll go over
We did,
both of
yeah. And
them.
so I'll have the question we asked, and then what we said then, and then kind of my sort of kind of quick and dirty fact checked. With if anybody else has any better fact checks as we're talking, they can give it in there. But we play in this kind of off the cuff. But actually, before I do that though, I was re-listening to our last conversation about this a year ago. Excuse me, and I jotted down what I thought was your worst take and what I thought was your most prescient take. And so I wanted to quote you on these two, and then I also have my what I thought was my worst take. And so here's what I think was your worst take, and you can tell me. I want to see if you cringe or not when I say it. None of the people in his foreign policy administration are great. They're not anti-war in the sense that like you and I are, but they are a marked departure from the total war neocon war hawk establishment that has permeated my entire lifetime. It's more like, okay, yeah, we're willing to kind of have a big stick, so to speak, but we're not going to try to do all these interventions. The cause has to be for actual American interests, and part of American interest isn't just like American hegemony, end quote.
Yeah. Um.
What do you think? Was that? Would you agree that was probably one of your worst takes?
Yeah. I mean, so like, it hasn't played out that way. I can kind of defend it from the knowledge that we had
At the time?
at the time, although there are some things that I definitely missed, because it's just impossible to keep track of everything everyone says, especially someone like Trump. And
Yeah,
then even then, it's hard to know how much of what he says is just bloviating and like trying to appeal to his base, because like there were some things he said about like not allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon or even get close to developing nuclear weapons. Um, Things he said even about going after uh, the drug cartels and whatnot and treating them as like as terrorists and a domestic threat. And like to some extent, I was like, yeah, I don't like that rhetoric, but I thought that Trump's foreign policy from 2016 to 2020 was closer to what we were going to get. And I thought that was about like, give or take a little bit in either direction. That was kind of the bottom. And I thought there was an opportunity for actually something even better. I was like, maybe this time he'll be more irritated at kind of the establishment that spent so many years trying to like legally prosecute him and go after him. and whether or not you believe the conspiracy theories, it seemed like a lot of his base and maybe even he, believed to some extent that whether you know, e explicitly or just, like, implicitly that the intelligence agencies and the opposition were responsible for his assassination attempt, so I just thought, like, he was gonna come in and play hardball. Like, I thought that when he said, like, "I'm gonna go in there and end the Russia-Ukraine war on, like, day 1," I thought, okay, maybe not day 1, but yeah, like, I thought, like, he's after all the years of Russiagate stuff and him trying to appease them and that not working, he was gonna go in there and be like, "Screw this, like, we're not sending all this money to Ukraine." Like, again, not for, like, humanitarian reasons, but just because, like, for selfish Donald Trump reasons and his ego. I thought he would go in there and like play hardball with Zelensky and just a little bit with Putin, and he'd work that to a clean end relatively quickly. And then after that, I thought like we're gonna have issues with Israel because we always have issues with
Well, and
Israel.
we're starting to get into predictions, so we may want to save
But
some of
anyway,
them.
well, it's
Yeah,
just in terms of his whole foreign policy thing, it's just like I thought there was reason to believe that,
yeah,
like, again, grading on a curve in terms of like what's possible or what other administrations did. I thought, he had, and we're getting into things that we're going to talk about later, but like, I mean, keep in mind, part of what pushed me over the edge was that he had guys like Vivek and Elon in his orbit, and they were like quote posting Ron Paul.
right.
So Donald Trump Jr. was also like interacting with like Dave Smith and Ron Paul and all that, and
Yeah,
it
saying
seemed
we're
like
not going to
so
put
many.
neocons in the administration.
Yeah, so it just seemed like, okay, even if this isn't the best case scenario, the worst case scenario has to be just like,
If we get
the
some, if we,
2016. Yeah.
yeah, if
So,
we get some of the things, do you think that maybe you overestimated the impact of like a Tulsi Gabbard and maybe underestimated the impact of like a Pete Hegseth or a Marco Rubio on foreign policy?
yeah, I thought that Marco Rubio as the appointment was sort of like the compromise, right? Like
Oh,
he
okay.
had to put someone in there from the old guard to like appease them. But keep in mind that when Trump was running the first time, Rubio was one of those never Trumpers, and
Yeah.
Trump was like absolutely vicious to him. So I kind of was like, and this was maybe me trying to do my own 4D chess in my mind, but I kind of thought it was almost like a power play to like put Rubio in there, and then Trump being like, Rubio, like, you're gonna be my, you know, bitch, right? Like
Mm,
you're gonna listen to what I have to say. I didn't think Rubio is gonna have uh the ability to leverage Trump much into anything like other people who were in that position might be able to do.
yeah.
I thought people like Tulsi and Vivek dropped out early, but Vivek and even Elon and whatnot, I thought that they were gonna, like I thought he was gonna have more good voices and bad voices. So,
Yeah.
but obviously it didn't play out that way.
Well, so your answer kind of brings me to maybe I'll do my worst take, what I thought was my worst take, and then we'll go to your most prescient take. So, my worst take, I think, and maybe someone else could go back and tell me if I had a worse one, but mine was Tulsi's got a lot of problems, but I think she's closer to us on foreign policy and on government spying, the deep state stuff. So that could be someone good to be around him. So I think in my case, I really thought maybe Tulsi was like an exciting pick, and that maybe she was going to. And for all I know, maybe she's really saying all the right things behind the scenes, and he just doesn't care. But there's no indication of that. Every day people are sharing something, a tweet she said 4 years ago, and pointing out that she's doing the exact opposite in her
Yeah.
capacity. And so, I think she's been a pretty big disappointment as far as everything we can see. Um, your, I think, most prescient take was you said some executive orders are obviously bad. This was because he was just starting to roll some of that. We were like within the first week or something. Some executive orders are obviously bad, like designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. It's like, okay, cool, just ramp up the war on drugs. I'm sure that'll go well this time and won't infringe on civil liberties and further militarize the police and all sorts of bad things that are going to go horribly, horribly wrong. And so, yes, I think in that case, I within the quote, maybe you didn't sort of, I think, anticipate was the way in which the war that the sort of designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations was going to get us involved in stupid wars. But you didn't notice that was moving in a really bad direction. So I thought that was your most prescient take. Okay, so do we want to go through the list and just kind of talk about what our initial predictions were?
Yeah, I did want to say something on Tulsi really quick, which is
Yeah.
just like that is such a betrayal in my mind, especially because like with the whole Iran thing, she had literally published a report like 2 weeks before that 12-day war saying that Iran was not seeking nuclear weapons, was nowhere,
Right.
reasonably close to doing it, and reporting that they were cooperating with uh inspections and whatnot, but not. And like the only thing she said negative was that they weren't keeping to the deal that Obama had implemented. I forget the name of it off the top of my head,
Which
but like,
the one that Trump had canceled?
right. Well, Trump withdrew from it,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And then so what Iran did was like, well, if you're withdrawing from it, we're not going to hold to it anymore. But that was like a bargaining chip to get America back to the negotiating table, which they
Mhm.
were willing to do, right? And so they just wanted to renegotiate a new deal. Uh, but then Trump, Tulsi got on the stand then like 2 weeks later and basically like, you know, lied and just like completely sold out. And I guess the most charitable thing I could say is that maybe she was acting out of fear because maybe maybe once you get into a certain level of power, you have the people who show you like, hey, here's a picture of your house, and here's another picture of your house, here's another picture of your house. Oh, weird, that's a picture of your house and it looks like there's a rifle sticking out towards it. So like, or the what's the joke, like, hey, here's an angle of the JFK shooting that no one's seen before. So like that
Well,
honestly might be my most charitable interpretation
I
of the downfall of Tulsi Gabbard.
my most charitable reading, because I saw it happen with old guard people when Trump first got in office, is that there was a sense that if I'm in the room, I can have an impact. So I'm going to have to kiss his butt. I'm going to have to do things that I find distasteful, because if I don't, then I'll leave and then he'll replace me with somebody who's a lot worse than I am. And then when I really need to speak up, when it's really important that I push back, then I can do it. And then just that day never comes,
But Iran should have been the moment to be like, this is the moment I need to speak up. I don't know. That's my opinion. But we can get into
Maybe,
more of
maybe,
the
but
predictions.
I suppose if like in the first few weeks, like they're already they're already starting to like do horrible things, and maybe you go,
I
oh
mean,
my
maybe
gosh, it's gonna get a lot worse
maybe she's sitting there like, I didn't think I'd have to, die on a hill like, 1 month into the
immediately,
administration.
right? Okay, so our first question last year: will Trump increase tariffs? I said yes. You said yes. And my fact check is yes. Trump was really big on tariffs in his first months, but was very erratic and unpredictable with the rates that he created and when and how they would be enforced. But the average U.S. trade weighted tariff rate rose from about 2.5% at the start of the year to over 15% by year end, the highest since the 1930s. Tariffs generated some revenue, to be sure, but certainly not enough to replace the tax code, as some in MAGA world suggested it might do.
And there's also no telling to what extent this has cost. Like, yeah, maybe it brought in revenue, but did it certainly hurt the American economy, hurt
Yeah.
jobs, hurt American
Shut down a lot of
workers.
businesses. Yeah.
So, but hey, the solution will be just to pass rebates, which will be funded by government printing more money. So,
Yeah. All right. Second question: will Trump significantly decrease taxes? I said, on the whole, I think he'll probably decrease taxes, but I don't think he's going to get rid of the IRS, because that was, like I said, something people were floating. You said more likely than not that he decreases some taxes somewhere. So we were kind of non-committal, but we figured something was going to happen there. And the answer is sort of. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which makes me laugh every time I say it, permanently extended temporary tax cuts from the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act. The act also created some temporary cuts on taxes for tips and overtime. The tax revenue, quote unquote, lost from these cuts in 2025 is around 150 billion, which is also the low end estimate for revenue collected from tariffs. And that math sounds pretty good until I'm going to ask you the next question. And that next question is, will Trump reduce government spending? I I think I said 100% no. You said as close to 100% no as you could imagine. So uh, I don't know why you dickered with me and didn't want to, just go ahead and say 100%, but you said as close to 100% no as you could imagine. I don't like these halfway answers from you, Jacob, but whatever. The fact was, no, we were right. We spent 7 trillion in 2025. That was up about 300 billion from 2024. Our budget deficit in 2025 was 1.8 trillion, which was 41 billion less than it was in 2024. So the deficit was a little lower. So that's pretty cool. And these numbers are, of course, taking in the various Doge cuts that have been implemented. And despite those, we still spent more. In defense of Trump, most of that spending is for mandatory programs like Social Security, Medicaid, and paying interest on debt, and those would have gone up no matter who was in office. Let's see here. Will Trump build the wall? That was our fourth question. And then my follow-up question was, will it be big and beautiful? And actually, I think I let you answer, then I forgot to answer, but I think I probably would have agreed with you at the time. You said he'll build some of it. I don't know if he'll finish it. And the fact is, he is working on it. He has not yet built the wall, past tense. But in the first 6 months of his presidency, 35 miles of wall were built from remaining allocated funds from 2021. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act allocated more funds for the wall, including what's called smart wall funding. And so we should expect a couple hundred more miles of wall in the next year or so. Can't tell if you're picking at your beard, if you're laughing. You're doing.
I'm trying not to cry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Will Trump resolve the war in Ukraine? I think this was another one where I think I let you talk and I forgot to answer. So I don't know for sure what I would have said at the time, but you said, I think it will happen. I predict that fighting will stop by the end of summer and a tentative peace deal will be reached by the end of the year. And we are now at the end of 2025, more actually past the end of 2025. And unfortunately, that has not panned out. But, it was a good hope.
I think there was like a small, like not official ceasefire for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like at some point in the summer while they were doing like, not even like, it was one of the things where like they reduced the fighting a little bit while they were in one of their negotiating phases, I think. But yeah, no, I was overly optimistic on that one, sadly.
I think JD Vance did initiate a Puys fire. So that was good.
I mean, again, even that moment from Vance where he started lecturing Zelensky was like, again, that was one of the things that was like, hey, it gives me a little bit of hope that like they're gonna, but follow through, has not been good there.
Yeah, I don't know. I had mixed feelings about that whole exchange, but I get what you're saying. Will the Israel-Palestine situation get better under Trump? That was a question that we'd asked. Now, that was, of course, the October 7th thing had happened in 2023. So that was, obviously things were not going very great a year ago when we asked this question. You said yes, less conflict, yes, but not in terms of the actual underlying problems. I think this was when Norm jumped in. He said, I suspect it will get better eventually, but not necessarily because of Trump. It's already at such a low point. It can't get, it just has to get better. And I said pretty much the same thing. The fact of the matter is, yes, it did get better under Trump. Most of 2025 saw significant airstrikes against Gaza from Israel. Much of those funds, of course, came from the United States. Trump did, however, help to negotiate a ceasefire in October, which also included the return of hostages taken by Hamas in 2023. Of course, the conflict is far from resolved, and we should expect more violence and future escalations, just as we have under every American president. However, the question is, has the situation got better under Trump? And the answer is yes, it has. Will the warfare state shrink under Trump? Was question 7. I think I said it'll stay pretty much the same. You said not enough, but I think there will be some reductions in that. But what's driving it will not be a true libertarian anti-war spirit. I think you were just kind of hoping for some Doge movements there. Enormous here. Then he said not hopeful that the warfare state will shrink under Trump, but we've got a better than 50-50 chance of improving. Fact of the matter is, no, it has not shrunk. Military funding has gone up under Trump, and he oversaw 3 high-profile military actions. I'm not counting the low-profile ones. A bombing of alleged nuclear facilities in Iran, the invasion of Venezuela to remove its dictator Nicolas Maduro, and the bombing of ISIS camps in Nigeria. Iran has not resulted in very significant repercussions yet, and it's too early to tell what will happen in Venezuela, though Trump has committed to nation building and the seizing of their oil resources to pay back America, by which he means oil companies, for Venezuela's socialist rulers not honoring previous contracts with American oil companies. Despite campaign promises of no new wars, 2025 saw U.S. military actions in at least 8 countries, including over 622 bombings, some against alleged drug traffickers who were treated as terrorist enemy combatants. Trump has not yet committed significant escalations in the Russia-Ukraine war, but he has signaled that he may. He also, of course, escalated the conflict in Yemen, which people don't generally talk about, but it's been going on for a long time. His administration planned the air raids in a Signal group chat. This is the air raids of Yemen, in which they accidentally added a journalist to their conversations and their memeing. Trump is also on track to bomb Somalia more than his last 3 predecessors combined, if his first year is any judge of that. So yeah, no good news on the warfare state front.
Well, if anything, it's not even just a comment on that. Like like what I said earlier, where I thought Trump was going to at least like for his own reasons lean away from the warfare sort of stuff. He seems to have embraced it. Like he seems to have almost like co-opted like he's achieving neocon ends, but using the more populist message and sort of America first rhetoric to justify it, which is like I didn't really see that coming because most of the people from that base are at least for the like not libertarian reasons, but at least for like kind of like selfish isolationist reasons, like to some extent non-interventionist and kind of isolationist. And I thought that Trump would just be like more of a focus on America. It's not good business to be doing these wars, but like even in the recent comments on Venezuela, like his statement was basically like, we've gone in there and we're going to run the country until a point where we can transition to a different leader judiciously and peacefully and all that. I'm just like this is basically Trump like making neocon talking points just in his own way. I mean, it's like you just play 2015 to 2016 Trump to Trump today, and it's just bizarre.
Well, and so here's the thing. I never thought Trump was going to be a non-interventionist because he never talked like a non-interventionist. Because he often would be very belligerent and threaten things or whatever. The one distinction that he made though was we're going to avoid quagmires. It was like we're going to go in, we're going to bomb, we're going to leave. And so that's why I think Venezuela was surprising to me. I was sort of concerned that Trump would make war seem more attractive because he would do it very quick. You know what I mean? He'd go in, he'd bomb, he'd leave. We're not stuck there. People like the explosions and stuff like that. And, great, he's killing ISIS terrorists or whatever. And so my concern was that, yes, people are just going to see that and go, hey, we can do this without, getting stuck there for 20 years. And we'll just do that instead. And so Venezuela surprised me. The increasing the warfare state, bombing the crap out of people, that doesn't surprise me that he's done that because he's always signaled that he was open to doing that. But the fact that he would be willing to say, we're going to stay in Venezuela and see what happens and we're going to help nation build, that was a surprise. Because he's been very clear that he was not going to do Iraq again.
Yeah, and it's even then like the amount of like I know there were drone strikes under Trump, but some of that was just like the continuing of things that were already going on, which is sometimes a little bit harder than we might think it is for the president to completely roll that back. But like there weren't as many. So there was like the killing of the Iranian general. There was the talking tough with North Korea. But like other than that, I just feel like there wasn't that much like
Yeah, well,
instigating new
Yemen.
conflicts with
Yeah,
again, Yemen was something that like had always been going on though. Like Obama had sort of surged with um funding the Saudis to bomb Yemen. So like yeah, Trump continued some of the stuff that was going on in Yemen, but that was kind of like part of the whole issue with Yemen was from my memory was that we had to appease the Saudis because of the blunder that was Iraq. That basically what we did at Iraq was such a blunder and it had negative consequences for the Saudis and we have such a close relationship with the Saudis that like we had to appease them somehow and Yemen was basically part of that appeasement. And
yeah,
so you can kind of imagine, like, I don't think this justifies it, but there's something different about Trump coming in and having this, like, you know, sort of like weird Frankenstein half Ron Paul foreign policy thing he ran on in 2016, and then coming in and being told, okay, yeah, that's fine. You don't want to, do all these interventions, but like these ones are already going on and we can't just get out of them because we have these business deals with the Saudis and they kind of rely upon us doing these things. And you can imagine Trump kind of like going along with that because it's already going on. That just seems different in nature than Trump being like, yeah, let's start conflict with Iran. Let's start conflict with Venezuela. Let's
yeah. I
no,
I can see that argument.
it's a little different.
I can see that argument. Yeah, I mean, in his first term, he didn't start any new conflicts with any new country, and he didn't start any conflicts with any new countries, I guess we could say. But he did threaten to. He was certainly open to it. And he played really aggressive with North Korea and stuff like that. So to me, it was always at least on the table that he might do that. But yeah, I mean, he didn't start anything new. That's true. Well, and I think you could argue then, but because I don't think Biden started any new conflicts either, and in fact, he ended Afghanistan. So you could say that
Well,
Biden was at -1.
I kind of hold Biden responsible for Russia, Ukraine, though.
Oh, interesting. Well, we could talk more about that maybe later, but I want to make sure we get to these questions. But yeah, maybe so. All right. Next question, number 8. Will the intelligence agencies be significantly wounded under Trump? And this is how I worded these questions. So the answers are.
You should have said this was my worst take, man. You should have said this was my worst take.
Well, okay, so I said there's a chance that Trump doesn't fill all of the appointments, but I don't see anything significant happening there. You said, I think the intelligence agencies might have some significant reductions to them or reforms, including reductions in personnel. So I don't think that was a bad take. So we'll get into that. Norm had an interesting take. He said, well, if we include the mainstream media, because I think I said at one point deep state instead of intelligence agencies, he'd say yes, but I don't see the deep state significantly reducing. Fact was, were intelligence agencies significantly wounded under Trump? Yes, but only in the sense that Massey, Khanna, and Green forced the Trump administration to begin releasing the Epstein files. Anyway, generally speaking, they, intelligence agencies have been used fairly aggressively. Trump has ordered investigations of high-profile Democrats and fired thousands of employees who he perceived as disloyal. He's also ordered the DOJ to investigate sanctuary cities so he could punish their leaders or defund them. That being said, yes, there have been a lot of people being fired or quitting. So in the sense of overall numbers, you could say that the deep state has been wounded under Trump. But there's not a weapon that Trump's not going to throw the ring into Mordor. He's just not going to do it.
I get you're trying to throw a bone here with the Epstein stuff, but like that was hardly even a wound. That was kind of more like they were forced to at least throw us a bone that was heavily redacted. And I still don't think that, like, there's probably tons of stuff they didn't release because they just couldn't find a way to redact it effectively. And I think the intelligence agencies have been strengthened under Trump in a way that I did not anticipate, because literally over a year ago, the entire right seemed to be completely ready to be like, yeah, like, abolish the FBI and abolish the CIA, defund these programs. Like, we don't have control over them. Trump has restored faith in the intelligence agencies because they answer to Trump. and they answer to Trump in selling his propaganda and his lies. And literally, we saw in real time from the campaign trail the Epstein files being a real thing that needed to be exposed, to being changed into a Democrat hoax, to being they never existed, to what the Epstein files were, and if they could be released. And like at one point, Pam Bondi was like, "They're on my desk," and then she's like, "They don't exist." Like literally, the narrative changed so many times that it's like I can't
Well,
even keep track of it. And just
in the same tweet, Jacob, there's the
yeah.
one tweet where he's talking about Massey just working for the Democrats to try to get the files released, and he goes, "But you know what? The files are only going to make the Democrats look bad." It's like, well, hold on, is like which is
Oh,
it? Is he working for the Democrat? Like, if you really believe that, you would release them, right? Like if only the Democrats are going to look bad through this,
right.
it's so bipartisan and wonderful that Trump is going to protect his Democratic pedophile colleagues because he cares so much about reaching across the aisle.
Yeah. No, the whole and like there's this we haven't done this yet. Norm and I have been planning to do this a green room where we cover the Andor series from the Star Wars universe. But there's this one line that has been sticking with me for so long from that show that just matches his administration so well and this point I'm making. And it's Senator Mon Mothma, who, if you haven't watched
I know, yeah.
Andor, she was the leader of the Rebel Alliance from like the original A New Hope, and she gives this speech as part of her like last speech before the Senate. Like after the Empire has risen and all that, and she says, "The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil," and so I'm going like almost above Godwin's law now because I'm comparing Trump to Emperor Palpatine. But like, there's something there in that's the most disheartening thing to me about this entire thing. It's not that like it's not that like I said, it goes against what my predictions were and what I thought was going to happen. But it's not like the most earth-shattering, surprising thing in the world that like, ooh, a person became president and governed like a statist, right? Like it's not like just that alone is not like super like it wouldn't really change my mood or output on American politics. But what's really soured me is the extent to which the right and MAGA have, like we talked about earlier, like they've completely flipped on things that they said that they held to be like important to them.
Yeah.
And they are willing to literally follow Trump and what he says, even down like contradictory claims that are clearly blatant lies. And that kind of power to control the narrative and control what people say and to have people believe in like these alternative versions of reality at any given point is what makes Trump and his current form a unique danger to the American nation and to the world. And again, I don't want to like oversell it and be dramatic and say like Trump is Hitler or Trump is because I think that would be overstating things, and I don't want to be given over to like alarmism or sensationalism.
I mean,
But
I think we should be aware that we could get there if we're not vigilant.
well, right.
But I agree with you. I don't want to over predict and in such a way undermine, true tragedies and horrible.
What creates the fertile ground for evil ideologues and maniacs like Hitler to rise to power is not the people themselves, like not like the leaders themselves, but it's rather the political climate that is people are willing to forsake truth. They're willing to entertain these sorts of narratives about reality because it's like they would rather believe that than reality. And to some extent, there are things outside of Trump that are causing this, right? Like our deep economic turmoil and sort of like the destruction of people's ability to compete in the market and to like seek the American dream. Just as like hyperinflation and debt drove people in Germany to desperation for solutions. Some of that is at play in a smaller degree in our current situation. But again, we have not hit that sort of like sufficient criteria yet for like a truly like Hitler like level threat to be in power, but we are starting to hit a lot more of those necessary ingredients to be into play for that kind of thing to be like that's not impossible. So it's like I went from being really optimistic, like I went from being like mildly reasonably optimistic about Trump that like some good things could happen. And to be fair, there are still a couple good things that happened, but yeah, definitely the direction we're heading in and the extent to which people are like losing their minds and their morality. Uh it's really troubling. It's really troubling, especially the extent to which people who are like they not just like self-professed Christians, but like people I know who probably, who go to my church, people who might go to your church,
Yeah.
people who are our neighbors. I mean, um, it's definitely a problem. It's definitely something that I think is the most pernicious thing about this administration, and is the reason why I am the most, more than anything else, why I am so remorseful about voting for Trump. I thought that voting for Trump, even if it went badly, there would still be a coalition of people that like were not libertarian, but that were like on
Decent
the
people.
right side of enough issues on in a libertarian way that could be worked with and could be outreach to. Now, to be fair, there are a contingency of the MAGA coalition that have abandoned ship, that did go, hey, this is too far. This is insane. Like, especially over the Epstein stuff. There are so many people who have like expressed their regret and have completely like, did a 180. But it's
Yeah.
not as many as I would have hoped would have.
I've seen it more over Rob Reiner for some reason than Epstein, but yeah, I mean, when you talk about truth, a couple things come to mind. One is that great quote, "Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad." And there's something about that where I just sort of feel like, you know, it's like watching everybody around me go insane, and there's like nothing I can do to dissuade them, and it's like so disheartening and discouraging. Um, or that there's that Solzhenitsyn quote about how fascism works in such a way that it's like, or totalitarianism works in such a way that it's like they lie to you and they're lying, but you can't say it, right? Like it's like you have to pretend to believe that they're telling the truth. I mean, and as for I think the new right, this is something we used to argue about a lot when we started talking, and you probably thought I was kind of annoying until we became more friendly. But I was never optimistic about the new right. I think you found that there were some things that maybe were in common, and I think you're really hopeful about being able to kind of build coalitions there. And I just never felt that way. I thought that they were superficially in agreement with us, but not really dispositionally.
Yeah,
And
no, I think I understand that more now, especially because there's a lot of people I feel about the left right now, probably the way you felt about the new right, where I see a lot of them who are like pro releasing the Epstein files, who are almost like starting to again be suspicious of the executive branch and its power
mhm,
to do all these things, including all these military operations, who even seem to be concerned about lowering taxes and I'm just like, and I'm like, you know what, like, but I can kind of see how, I can tell that they're kind of only superficially saying these things. And there were probably a lot of people on the right who were also just superficially saying those things. But because I'm more, I'm just, to be honest, with my own biases, I'm more predispositioned to, uh, be amenable and hopeful towards people on the right
yeah,
than on the left. And so now um, I'm kind of, I don't know, I'm kind of pessimistic on the right and the left right now. Although I guess I'm always willing to work with anybody to oppose tyranny, or in the moment, whoever shows up to a protest or online to oppose something, it's like, I mean, I guess for at least that moment we're against
yeah.
something, but uh,
Well,
and
so, I
you
mean,
always
yeah, I
want
mean,
to be doing outreach to people, but certainly it's there's a difference between like trying to reach people and work with people where you can versus like, oh, I think these people are fellow travelers. I think that's definitely shifted in my mind.
That's for me, yeah. And those who are interested, we did a sort of a debate you kind of hosted between me and Alex on this, whether libertarianism or left wing or right wing. And I think what I would say is the problem with the left is primarily one of the brain. That I think their hearts are in the right place, in the sense that they want a lot of the things that I think are important. They want people to be able to be fed, to be able to afford medical care, to be able to kind of mind their business and be left alone for the most part. And all that sounds great. The problem is they just don't have a real sense of what it means to bring about that kind of world, right? They think it has to happen through the state. That's the best way to do it. On the right, I think, you know, they have our kind of our sense of realism. But I don't necessarily always think, especially amongst the new right and the alt right, that their hearts are in the right place. I think they have a disease of the heart, and the left has a disease of the mind. That's how I tend to think about it. But maybe others would disagree. But
yeah, I guess it's a mixed bag on that. But that might be a good conversation for a future episode.
Yeah.
Dive
All
into
right.
some of that more.
We got 2 more questions, and then we can. I have a few other points that we might get to, but related to the 10 questions we initially asked. Number 9 was, will Trump decrease regulations? I said probably. The EPA is one agency I can see Trump doing something significant with. You said I think he will. Norm had said yes. The question is whether they'll be significant to. But yeah, we'll see. So that's what he kind of was more or less what he said. Okay, the facts. Yes, he did decrease regulations. On January 31st, 2025, he signed the executive order unleashing prosperity through deregulation, requiring agencies to repeal at least 10 existing regulations for every new one issued. I have to say, that idea sounds pretty good to me. The Department of Education is in the process of being broken up due to another executive order from Trump. Also, I'm very sympathetic to that. Environmental and DEI regulations have been especially targeted. Although in the case of the latter, the DEI stuff, we've seen, I think, sometimes kind of bizarre efforts to retell American history along conservative lines in like federally funded museums, to really kind of, I like to say, the Lee Greenwoodization of, of American museums. So yeah, there's definitely been some changes there. And then the last question is, will you be happier 4 years from now with where the country is politically and economically? So now we're not 4 years down the road. We're only 1 year down the road. The response I gave there was kind of long-winded. I said, when I think economically, there are certain things that Trump is going to do that are going to be positive. I think the stock market's going to respond positively to him. I think there's a sense that people have on that level that Trump is good for business. I think the deregulation stuff, which he's probably going to do, is going to be good for business. I think his immigration policy is probably going to hurt trade overall. His tariff policy, as much as he can do of that, is going to hurt, because obviously it was unconstitutional, but he did it anyway, and they've been very slow to hold him accountable. Politically, I said, it's tough to say. Trump, even without that kind of mainstream media response, is so toxic for the vibe of the country that I think I'll be glad to see him go in any case. You'd said, will you be happier 4 years where the country is politically and economically? You said yes, in the sense that I think there will be a combination of some important improvements, but where Trump doesn't go far enough, where this administration doesn't go far enough, that perhaps people will be more amenable. Oh, sorry, I needed to clean up this a little bit, because when we're chatting, sometimes it's hard to write down. Basically, what you said was there will be some improvements, and you're hoping that where Trump doesn't go far enough, people will become more amenable to libertarian ideas. That they're going to say, okay, maybe we should keep going further along those lines. And so Norm was kind of interesting. He said, parts of me think I'll be happier. Yes, but I'm still going to have to deal with some of the same things, and some in a heightened sense. And then he said, mass deportations will result in economic slowdown. So it's not 4 years yet, but are you happier than you were a year ago? Economically and politically?
Only in the sense that as the world gets worse, I continue to try to draw closer to God, to Christ, to my family, to my church, and realize that is where happiness and fulfillment and growth actually happens and not in politics.
Hmm.
It's one of those things that I know you and I have engaged with a lot of other Christian anarchists who are, for lack of a better word, I don't mean this insultingly, but are kind of legalistic about voting and political action. And I still think that they're wrong in terms of the absolute principle about political engagement and involvement
Yeah.
in voting. But on a
It's not always
effectiveness,
idolatry. It's not always idolatry to vote.
right, exactly, right. And listen, I would say, insofar as I think I've been really critical of my decision, I don't think like I don't think my vote for Trump was done in sin. Like I don't feel convicted of that. I think it was like maybe there was some like false hopes and expectations about what might happen, but I didn't like cast my vote in this like sort of like I don't know, like placing undue aspirations or faith in Trump. It was I mean, I actually prayed, like, even though I'd already committed to doing it, like the day of, I was like praying to God. I was like, God, like, like I don't care what I've said, like this, like what I vote for, who I vote for, if I even show up to the voting booth, like I want to do what you instruct me to do. And if I feel like you instruct me to not vote for Trump or not vote at all, then I won't do so. Um, I cast my vote with it wasn't that I didn't have any I had some doubts, right? Which I think is normal. I think I was like, "Hey, I don't know." But like, this is what I think makes the most sense, and so I did it in kind of like a uh knowing that some good could come out of it, but it's ultimately in God's hands. Uh Now, just from a learning through not just this, but my entire time in politics, including in the LP, there's opportunity costs to all this. And there are just systemic things about the country and system we live in that I'm definitely more pessimistic about changing things from within the system. Uh, you might be able to get more done locally. Something that maybe white pilled me a little bit was that even though it wasn't done through the Libertarian Party, someone who is a small L libertarian and a Christian is now my mayor in my borough. And she ran against the incumbent Republican. Um, so that was cool. And it's like, hey, you can win local, and you can probably make a lot of impact for like the people in your community that way. And that's not nothing. But I do feel like, uh, yeah, I've definitely recalculated a little bit in terms of just how much the answer can, to any of these problems can be, at least not politics first. I think it's ultimately changing the culture. And I think, listen, there are some things that I really care about that I feel this urge to try to change, and I don't know how to change them without some political involvement. Like, I want the wars to end. And it does seem like you kinda have to have some engagement with the political process to, like, leverage politicians who can make a difference in that to actually start
Yeah.
rolling back the
Well,
warfare state.
I'll
But
give an example. This is one I mentioned a lot when people ask about voting. I voted to legalize marijuana possession in my state, Ohio, and I don't regret that even a little bit. I don't have any conflict about that because there are people that I know and care about who smoke marijuana, who are good parents and hardworking people, and I don't want
right.
them to have to worry about going to jail and losing their house and having their
Well,
kids
and
taken away
and
from
and what about the people who are already in jail, right? Like, because I say this to agorists all the time. It's like I think agorism is a cool concept for sort of like creating counter institutions that exist outside the state and make the state less relevant. But like, there are real victims of the state, both domestically and foreign, and internationally. And as a Christian, I kind of feel like maybe my power to help those people is more limited, but I want to a advocate for them, and b like if there's some way to within the system to like vote on a referendum or put people in that'll pass laws that will
Mhm.
get some of these people out of jail, that will put less people in the line of fire of drone strikes and bombs, then it's like I think that's worth trying. But
Yeah.
uh
Well, I mean, the best way to help your neighbors is to get violent people off their backs, and then if you want to, give them a little bit of money or help them out, or take care of their kids for them, whatever, while they're out doing grocery shopping or something, then you can do all that positive stuff, and that's great. But like, the best thing you can do for somebody is to unleash them, to take them out of the cage, to take the chains off, so that they can live their life, they can work, they can take care of their family, and then as needed, you can assist. But like, I think, of course, it makes obvious sense that you free people first. Like, that's the biggest way you can help them.
Yeah, and I guess there's just this tension of like there are some things that are really important that are also really hard, and so I I guess part of getting the ability to free those people, right, to get them to no longer be under enslavement, is you have to kind of build a grassroots movement of people who are all kind of believing the same thing on a particular issue, that'll move the Overton window and force the politics of the day to reign with that evolution in the kind of like cultural zeitgeist. Like, it's kind of how abolitionists abolished slavery, right? They didn't really infiltrate the system and change it. They just kind of made it to where it was like no longer politically viable to support slavery. And then, a lot of countries banned slavery. America, you know, didn't quite get there as fast, but
Mm.
eventually got there. I think that's something that we have to do, both in like just the big picture, as in terms of like pushing towards a more voluntarist order, but like, having anti-war movements, having, specific movements for specific people groups like the Palestinians, or for Nigerian Christians, or for Venezuelans, right? And just uh but I think Christians do need to play. So it's like, when I say Christians should maybe be wary about getting into politics, I mean that in terms of like running for office, getting heavily invested in a political campaign to elect someone for office. But I definitely think Christians kind of like, like, listen, we the second edition of this is coming out later this year, but the opening of the book still kind of has that like the questions about like, should we care about politics? Like, shouldn't we just be like, that's the whole first chapter. Why should I care about politics? I think part of the gospel message is sort of like inherently political, and it calls us to inherently care about politics when politics is rightly defined. It's just that we have to engage in politics in ways where we're fighting the forces of this world with the weapons of the kingdom that we're a part of, and not necessarily uh trying to like out kingdom out
Right.
kingdom the world of, I can't fight for the right way
Well,
to parse that. You know what I mean?
yeah, I think it's in negative terms. I think we're not trying to build the kingdom through the state, through violence, which is really the only tool the state has. I think largely our political responsibility is to remind the state or government or whatever we're talking about, that organization or whatever it is, um, that they have sort of like natural law obligations to respect the rights of the people, to leave them alone unless they're hurting somebody else. And so, just, yeah, I mean, I get, so it's largely negative, and there's a little bit of positive in the sense that we're sort of saying, like, if yeah, sure, if somebody's hurting somebody, or someone's stealing from someone or trying to kill them, or then yeah, we got to do something about that. But it's largely negative in force, I
Well,
think.
and this is the last thing I'll say, and then you can take us wherever you want. Probably should close in the next 10 minutes or so, but like, and this is a hard message, and I'm not saying I live this perfectly, and I'm not saying there's not like there's some wisdom in how you exercise this. But keep in mind that like there were people in the Bible who got to positions of power within certain kingdoms where they were like, like we are. Like they were strangers in a foreign land, right? And that's what we are as Christians in this fallen world we live in the kingdoms of this world. It's not our true home, and we're citizens of a greater kingdom. Uh, I think we need to think about what it means to like be like Daniel, to be like, Meshach, Radshach, and Abednego, and be like, we will, kind of like cooperate with earthly kingdoms insofar as like they do the things that they're kind of like minimally ordained to do, to kind of like uh restrain physical violence and things like that. But like, um, we need to be willing to speak out when people abuse any type of authority or power. And I think Christians need to be more willing to understand that, like, that means being willing to be risked. You have to be willing to risk being thrown in the lion's den or being thrown in the fire. And I don't mean that like throw caution to the wind, but it does seem like a lot of Christians have like become so allergic to that truth that they think the way to operate is actually that, like, I have to preserve my safety by any means necessary. And that's not the biblical message. I'm not saying it's wrong. Listen, I'm a father. I have 5 kids. I'm not saying you don't think about your family's safety. I'm saying that if you're worried about your family's safety when it comes to like standing up against something or standing for something, and then like your primary motivation becomes safety to the extent to where you're like, I must advocate for violence upon this group of people who I'm told to preach the gospel to protect my family's safety, I think we're getting something wrong. That's what I'm really convicted of right now, is just that, like, I'm not saying there's not a tension there, but I think that too many Christians in the West have completely miscalculated how to resolve that tension and have sort of like said, I don't like this tension. I'm gonna throw the tension away and I'm just gonna default to like, you know, whatever's good for my country, whatever good for my family, whatever good for my community. And it doesn't matter if it comes at the expense of the oppression or the deaths of other people that are not in my nation. So
Yeah, I agree. Well, so maybe I do have maybe a question I want to ask you in a minute, but I'll kind of wrap up with my current feelings. We're not 4 years in, as I mentioned, but the political climate I feel worse about than I did a year ago. Our economic prospects I feel worse about. On a more personal level, I'm sure a lot of other libertarians have felt this way, but it's kind of, when you can see when everyone else seems blind, or you have principles when no one else seems to, it almost like starts to feel like a curse. And if I wasn't a Christian, if I could not go back and read other Christians who felt this way in their time and place, or look at the Bible and see Jesus saying, "A wicked generation, how much longer must I contend with you?" Or Elijah praying his heart out to God and saying, "I feel like I'm the only one left." I think it would be hard to have any hope. Um, I do, but also I feel a little bit like Jimmy Stewart and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where he's like filibustering about the great American principles that we can't let die, and then his body just finally gives out. Like, I have to admit that I feel more discouraged about my neighbors and less hopeful under Trump than I suspect I would have with the Harris presidency.
Um, yeah, I think there's some like I don't know. Like the counterfactuals are just impossible to know.
That's true.
And to be fair, like when I was making my predictions and part of me voting for Trump was actually like I was evaluating two sets of like two unknown variables. Like I was like, I don't know, right? But I was kind of basing off past performance. I was like, well, Harris will probably be like Biden, but potentially worse. And Trump, I was thinking would just be like Trump, but I thought we had already seen his bottom, and I was wrong about that. Um, but it's hard to know. Like, listen, there would be some things about Harris winning that would be better right now if she had won. For one, the right would still be politically motivated to be against war and to be against the intelligence agencies.
The right would be
Uh,
better, but the left would be worse.
right, yeah.
Right.
So we wouldn't have probably the same level of mass deportations we have now. Um, I think, I don't know if we talked about this in the prediction video. I predicted there'd be, you know, I thought Trump would do the same as he always like. Every president had kind of been kind of the same when it came to immigration, kind of like close enough in terms of like a weird mixture of there's legal immigration, but there's also plenty of people who aren't allowed in, and there's mass deportations and whatnot. Trump's definitely kicked it up a notch in ways that I didn't quite think he would do. So I think Harris would be better in that regard. But I don't know. Trump's made some really bad foreign policy blunders, but I don't know that Harris gives me any reason to believe she wouldn't have been just as bad or potentially worse. It's hard to say. Um, uh, yeah, I don't know. It would be interesting to if you could run that experiment, like what would the right wing look like after 4 more years under a Democrat? Because it kind of feels like it could go either way. They could have gotten way worse, or maybe they could have like just because I guess kind of how I feel about the left right now. I'm like, are you guys really going to, at the end of this 4 years, if you get another chance at the presidency, are you really going to be like, and now let's put someone in there and just forget about like, you know, let's just keep all the same level of power in the executive branch that we just saw get misused for the last 4 years. Like it just, I guess, at the end of every presidency, you always think that like the other side will finally learn their lesson and be
They
like,
never
we
do.
can't keep doing this. But
Yeah.
then they just let you down and they don't learn the lesson. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I do get what you're saying, even though I don't know if I'm quite there, but it's like
Well, if
I
yeah,
guess it's one of those things where you're like, I feel like we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. Like we're damned with Harris if she would have won. We're damned with Trump if with him in. It's like six in
yeah.
one, half a dozen in the other. It's there's more than one way to skin a cat, and there's more than one way to rush towards the cliff.
Well, which I guess if nothing else makes us feel compelled to focus on Jesus as our only hope,
Yes.
which I
Yes.
suppose that's good. Yeah, you mentioned deportations, and did you see the meme the Department of Homeland Security shared where they were suggesting we needed to do 100 million deportations, which is more immigrants than there are legal and illegal in the country?
Listen, man, I get those advertisements to like join ICE in my inbox and in my social media feeds. It's like, listen, man, I'm all for mass deportations. I will start in Washington D.C. in the Capitol building, in the White House. I moved on to the Federal Reserve building, to the IRS building, the Department of the Treasury, and then I'll start deporting my fellow ICE agents. I will not stop until every politician and bureaucrat and crony capitalist and would be tyrant is deported somewhere where they are no longer a threat to the American people.
Well, amen to that. I'll mention one more thing before we end. I've seen you post asking for forgiveness for voting for Trump and talking about your remorse, and I think it's good to reflect and want to improve on past mistakes or miscalculations. I do want to say that I do believe you were making what you thought was the best decision in a very unfavorable circumstance. It was either Trump or Harris, or vote third party for a guy who was almost certainly not going to win. And I get the calculation you did. It's not the same calculation that I made, and I don't hold you responsible for Trump's win. I mean, you have a lot of Twitter followers, Jacob, but you're not Elon Musk. I don't think that if you hadn't announced that you're voting for Trump, I think he would have won anyway. And so I don't blame you for Trump being evil.
I picked up a quarter of my Twitter followers because Elon Musk retweeted me, reposted me saying I was voting for Trump. So
Okay, well maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is your fault. Um, but I think either way, I think we need to be willing to forgive each other for decisions we make in an evil system where there's not a single choice that isn't without peril. And I'd say the same thing about COVID overreaction, which I think a lot of libertarians and right wingers would disagree with me on there. But I think it's because ultimately we need to be able to give each other permission to say I miscalculated, I made a mistake, I'm done putting my hopes in the state. How can we move forward? And so, I'm glad that you've reassessed, but I don't want you to feel like you need to bear the weight of Trump's presidency. You've done the remorse bit, and I think we can let it go, Jacob. I think you can move forward with your life at this point.
yeah, I feel like so like one thing I forgot to say earlier, and this will connect to what you said, like the deregulation stuff. Like I have people in my orbit who are still who are like, yeah, Trump's done some stuff we don't like, but I really think the deregulation stuff is going to pay a lot of dividends, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
most important thing in this presidency. And so part of me has like said at multiple points that I've like, man, I'm just done. Like this is just too bad. Like I regret supporting this. And but then people will say like, well, okay, this is bad, but it's going to be outweighed by all this good down the road. And then I kind of like, I guess back off a little bit from the edge of that and go, well, all right, well, like, I don't know, maybe it's still only been a year in, maybe, in 2 to 3 years. And like, listen, like, I guess there's this chance that like there's always this chance, right? That like, you know, like in the next year, Trump could do a U-turn and be like, we're no longer in Venezuela. And also I've brought peace between Israel and Gaza and Russia and Ukraine. And now all so like anything is possible, right? Like a bunch of good things could just suddenly magically happen. But I see no expectation of that that's realistic. And I think my regret is not so much steeped in like even the policy stuff, because that's kind of always going to be there. It's more in the like I regret putting I guess I regret the kind of strategy I thought was
Mm,
going to work. I regret thinking that uh there was a bunch of fellow travelers on the right. I
right.
still think there are some, but I think I miscalculated there. And I guess I regret to the extent that perhaps I played a role in I mean probably not a huge role, but I guess I just regret even having the association with this administration, because the extent to which they are just, again, going back to what I said earlier, that they just so flagrantly and so disgustingly like uh lie and like gaslight us that like we're not like again in the same breath make contradictory statements and try to you know uh make make it out like like we're crazy for calling them on it.
Mhm.
Uh and to the extent to which I was
BS.
like the extent to which I was like identifying with that group of people who are now out there cheering on that kind of sophistry and that kind of demagoguery, and just like that's where my remorse really comes from. It's not that I'm trying to say like it's my fault this happened. It's
Hmm.
more that like there were dangers in that I didn't account for, and there were risks that I didn't that people warned me about that I didn't really take seriously, that now I see more clearly. And so it's not even, I guess some of it's remorse, but some of it's just like, hey, like, I've learned something through this and I would not make that decision again. Um Even with like, listen, I think it's amazing Ross Ulbricht is a free man, and I will not take that away from Trump. Like that he didn't have to do that. Um and listen, I'll go one further. I know there are some people who want to like m- who have problems with the Mises Caucus and with Angela McArdle, but the people who really made this happen were Lynn Albrecht, Ross's mom, and the people who were in the ear of Trump to make this an issue for him, which were which was Thomas Massey and Angela and Austin. Like they were the ones that they met with him, and Trump was like, "How do I get libertarian voters?" And they said one of the easiest things you could do is pledge to free Ross,
Hmm.
and uh, so they got that promise out of him, and it was like, one of those like easy to fulfill promises that he did. And so like, you know, that was a win. And if all you can do in politics is get horrible people and evil politicians to occasionally do the right thing and free and innocent people, then that's worth trying to do, and I think that's great. But there's a difference between like, trying to leverage politicians to do things versus like, me saying, as a private individual, like publicly, I'm going to vote for this person and I think all these good things are going to happen, like uh not just politically, but that like this is a movement of people who really care about liberty.
Hmm.
um anyway, that's I guess where I'm at on that, but I appreciate what you said.
Well, I see you beat yourself up over it, and like I said, growth is good, but take it easy, man. It's all right.
Well, again, I think some of it is also that I gained. Again, I wasn't like I seriously picked up a lot of followers from supporting Trump, and to some extent, I guess there's almost that imposter syndrome of like, um, like he feels a little bit dirty, like like
You
every
you
bad
you,
thing Trump. So anyway, yeah,
you
I don't
gained
know.
you gained 5,000 Twitter followers, but you lost your soul.
Right? Yeah. What profit a man if he gains Twitter follow? Yeah, yeah, it's something like that. Like I don't think I'm responsible for any of the bad things he did. It's just like some of it is also like I don't know, like for better or worse. Like I'm not a huge person, but I have like comparatively to a lot of people in the liberty movement, because we're a small movement, I have somewhat of a following, and
Hmm.
I represent LCI, and and I was clear that my endorsement was my endorsement and not LCI's endorsement. But it's like, I host the Biblical Anarchy podcast. I host the Green Room for the Libertarian Christian Institute on a damn near weekly basis. And so it's like, I don't know, I think to some extent it's not that I'm trying to like berate myself, but it's just trying to be like, hey, I really thought that voting for Trump was going to push my values, Christian and libertarian values,
Hmm.
to be more successful in the country, and it's really not. And you know I'm not gonna like spend the rest of my life berating myself about it, but especially while he's still in power, I'm gonna like signal, because the other thing is like I feel like there's other people out there that probably feel like me. For as much as listen, it's probably the vast majority of MAGA voters or Republicans or liberty minded people who voted for Trump, and they're not going to, they're going to have a hard time admitting they were wrong. But I feel like if I go out there and just own that, like, hey, I got this wrong and I think this is a disaster, that gives other people the ability to also like admit they were wrong and to try to also like be like, we're on this journey together and like we're learning and we're growing, and that's what humans do. And so I don't want to be, like self degrading to the point of like where it's like I don't know, uh masochism or anything, but I guess I just feel like I have a responsibility to at
Yeah,
least like, to once in a while to kind of remind people, because like they want to throw it in my face like I'm some like never Trumper, like I'm some left winger. I'm like, dude, like I voted for Trump, like like you guys got me to vote for Trump by selling a particular package, and he's betrayed that package and he's betrayed things you voted for too. So
sure.
there's strategic
And it
elements.
does, yeah. It gives you an ability to speak to that in a way that I couldn't, right? And so, yeah, I think there
And
could be
maybe
some.
that's like, and like I talked to my friend Hody about this. I think you've interacted with him a little bit,
Mhm.
because I was like, like, dude, like I really felt led like this was the right thing to do, and now I feel so bad, and it's like I don't know what good could come of this. But it's like, yeah, like to some extent, you are going to have more credibility with some people because you didn't vote for Trump. But there's going to be people that maybe I have more credibility now with, or more of a
Sure.
window to speak to, because I did. And so God uses everything
Yeah.
for the growth of his kingdom. And so it's like if what I have to do is like, every few months just roll out the, I voted for this and I regret it train, just to kind of like
Sure.
let people feel like that's a thing that you're allowed to do.
Yeah.
I want to do that. We need more people who are willing. We live in an age where people only know how to double down.
Mm.
And it's like we need to model for people that like, hey, I made a mistake. I thought this, I was wrong. And also like just because you vote for someone doesn't mean that you have to like, bend over backwards for 4 years justifying everything they did.
No, that's good. No, and I think just kind of quickly wrap up. That's the danger. This is something Jonah Goldberg is a conservative guy, kind of a neocon, but an interesting guy and I think a deep thinker, has said that people don't like saying that they voted for the lesser of two evils, right? They might say it in the moment, but over time they're going to want to try to justify it because they don't like letting that how that sits with them, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's impressive that you've been able to make that acknowledgement, because I think you talked about are these people fellow travelers? Can we reach out to them and bring them over? And I think what's happened in a lot of cases is people that I think were influential in libertarianism, who were persuaded to vote for Trump, have become they've moved in that direction. They haven't brought a lot of people to libertarianism, but I think they have felt the need to now justify their decision, and so they're going on Twitter and saying horrendous anti-libertarian MAGA crap, and you're not, to your credit. I think I'd be a lot harder on you if you were. And so, so there might be times where I've joked about you voting for Trump or whatever, but I hope you understand that I appreciate the the way you approached it and your integrity and your heart about it. I didn't make the same decision, and I told you at the time why I wouldn't. But I don't see you as an immoral person or an empty person or a whatever. Like I do some who have continued to go along with what Trump is doing, even when he's doing the exact opposite of what they said they voted for. So
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
yeah.
Well, I think we I don't know. I guess I don't want to play the prediction game again, but uh I guess we'll hope for better things in year two.
Yeah.
But at the
When
end
we
of the day,
do,
it's like we both said, like when things get better, we can like praise God for you know pushing things in a good direction according to His will, and when things get worse, we praise God because we know like this isn't our home, and there's a better kingdom, better nation that we're a part of that we can experience now, and that's part of this message. Like the whole LCI project, I think, is just as much about like promoting a free society from Christian principles as it is trying to promote the idea, like promote the gospel to people who care about a free society, because those are intersecting thoughts. And so I hope, if there's any, I know there's a lot of people out there who are very black pilled in general. And like, even if like Cody and I, like, we're probably both black pilled on politics, we're very white pilled when it comes to just life in general, because that's what having your life transformed by Jesus Christ gives you, is that no matter what happens, even when, you know, the storms come, you have something to anchor your hope in. So if there's anything I can recommend people do that I 100% have faith will always be a good decision, it's definitely to you know make that decision to um just if you don't, if you haven't before, to contemplate and pray on the gospel message, and pray for that to be something that is revealed to you. So any closing words from you, Cody?
no, I mean I agree with all that. I mean you gotta put your hope in something that's much better than the horrible crap that not just the politicians, but just I think that sometimes the sorry state of the world. And there's a libertarian gospel that's not nearly as good as the Christian gospel, but I think the libertarian gospel is that people actually can be very good when we get the state and we get violence out of the equation. That when we work together and get along and talk to each other, I've got friends and family that I love and work together with, people in my church. We talk about politics, things go downhill. But I think most people, once you remove that violence equation, where a lot of us are really on the same page, and so there's that kind of libertarian gospel, but that's not going to save anybody. It's not the kingdom of God coming. It's not the resurrection. It's not, I think the libertarian gospel is negative. The Christian gospel is positive. It's about what we
Yeah.
get from knowing Jesus, and so hopefully, at the end of 2028, as much as I like being right, hopefully at the end of 2028 we have some better things to say, or God forbid, at the beginning of 2029, as we discern whether JD Vance is going to certify the election. um, we'll be having this conversation, and it'll sound more optimistic.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Cody, for being here, for helping to make this happen. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for your comments and your engagement. Please, of course, if you want to support this show, libertarianchristians.com/donate. We had a really good end of the year fundraiser, and of course, your donations throughout the year are appreciated as well, to really help us to continue to grow and get these conversations and this message and this project that we're doing here at LCI in front of more people. If you even if you can't donate, just sharing this, liking this video wherever you're watching it, and subscribing so that you are aware of future live streams is a great way to help as well. I will be back here. So we're live every Monday for the most part. I will also be here, though, tomorrow night. I'm hosting a debate between two libertarians on the topic of Venezuela. One who wants to defend the Trump's actions and say that it was actually a net positive for America, and one that doesn't think it was. And so that'll be an interesting debate to try to, I'm not very good at, I actually think I'm good at moderating debates for the most part, but it's really hard when I get asked to moderate a debate that I have like really strong opinions of. So hopefully I do a little bit better at this one than the last one in terms of like staying moderate the whole time. But that'll be tomorrow at 8 o'clock Eastern in the evening, of course. And then we'll be back again, of course, next Monday for our regular programming. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys for today's live stream. As always, conclude by saying, live at peace, live for Christ, take care.
Now.